All right, we are back here on SportsLine. Rhett Bryan from Titans Radio, our guest tonight as we get set for the Titans season opener coming up on Sunday, high noon at Nissan Stadium. Everybody looking forward to this one, Rhett. Titans and Raiders, two of the preseason favorites in the AFC, and we talked a little bit about those expectations. They're realistic. Titans can go out and do some damage. I do think that Sunday's important to set the tone, and we were talking about this before the show began. You can see this playing out a lot of different ways at the beginning, but one thing that I know for sure is the beginning of the schedule is important for the Titans, because after the Raiders, which is a tough game at home, you have Jacksonville, which has always been difficult in Jacksonville. Then you've got the Seahawks, who are most people's pick to win the NFC West.
That's right.
Then you go to the road for a couple of games at Houston, your division champ from last year, and at Miami. To me, that's a very difficult first 5 games for any team in this league. And to some degree, as good as I think the Titans can be, you just kind of have to keep your head above water through those 5 games. And then the schedule becomes more manageable to make a run later on in the year.
Sure.
But how important do you think this first game is to set the tone?
Oh, it's paramount. Is it the end of the world if you don't? Probably not, but if you're out of the gate 1-0 against the Raiders and you're healthy, then maybe you set your sights on Jacksonville. You think about what happened last Christmas Eve.
Yep.
Maybe get a little fire there, and certainly the whole division thing starting. The Seahawks, I think, is that's the X factor in all this, because you don't see those guys very often, and they're still loaded with talent. You know, they have Eddie Lacy at running back now, the former Green Bay Packer, and they still have Russell Wilson, the Legion of Boom, all those guys. I think you got to be careful with yourself there. And you're right, just like 2016 schedule, in Week 4 and Week 5, you're on the road at Houston, you're on the road at Miami, and anything can go sideways in either of those matchups. I think the Dolphins, that's an intriguing one, because Jay Cutler's the quarterback, Tannehill's on the shelf with an ACL. Jay Ajayi is the guy that you got to bottle up and stop, and they did that so effectively 1 year ago almost. Held them to, I think, like 62 yards rushing, ran all over them. If you could have a formula like that, you could probably get a win there. But the Texans, you really got to go get that game. You haven't won down there in forever. And again, if J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney and Whitney Merciless and those guys are healthy, you're going to have a serious matchup all day long. But they lost free agents. They lost their best cornerback in A.J. Bouye, who went to Jacksonville. They lost one of their good linebackers, John Simon, who's now in Indianapolis. So there's some chess pieces that have moved around. But yeah, it's a tough schedule to start out.
And when you look at their offense too, they may be shuffling some pieces around, including the quarterback early on in the year. So even if the offense catches up to that potent defense of theirs by later on, you may have an opportunity in Week 4 to go in there and steal one from a team that's maybe inserting Deshaun Watson for the first time or second game in his career. So big opportunity for the Titans early on. You mentioned health a moment ago, Rhett, and I think we should have to talk about the wide receiver position. People looked at it throughout the preseason, and there was seemingly so much depth there with all the guys that they had. Now you look at this roster, and there's really just 5 wide receivers on the team, including Eric Weems, who I think we all believe will largely just be used on special teams and as a kick returner. So that means you really have just 4 wide receivers out there, and 2 of them didn't play much in the preseason, and that's Eric Decker, the veteran who was signed after minicamp, and then Corey Davis, the number 5 overall pick, who literally, was on the field for about 4 hours during training camp before he hurt his hamstring. They're both supposedly ready to go, but what can we expect from those 2 guys within the offense this weekend, do you think?
Well, I think you know what you're getting in an Eric Decker, veteran, knows the routes, knows the route tree already, and certainly you could see him being used in the red zone for sure, because that's where he's deadly. Corey Davis, I think, is the unknown. We've seen the film on him from Western Michigan. We haven't seen much of him at practice because of coming back from the ankle that he had in the pre-draft process, and then the hamstring that kept him out in much of training camp. I'm sure they'll have a number of plays dialed up for him. I don't know exactly how or where they line him up and how many reps he actually gets. You know, Mike Mularkey told us yesterday that there's kind of a pitch count on him because they want to monitor that. They want to make sure, because I'm sure it'll be warm. The Titans wearing all white unis, so they'll be a little cooler than the Raiders wearing all black. But you know, I think that's the other thing in terms of health that you have to watch is guys get wound up too tight when they come out for that first ball game, and next thing you know, people are tweaking this and that and the other, or cramping up, and you hope that that's not the case with Corey Davis. I'm excited to see the young man play. We know what he could do in college and saw him do some good things against some big talent outside of that that conference, and very excited to see him suited up and play.
He's the all-time receiving leader in the FBS, so you got to feel pretty good about what he can eventually do for your team. The fact that he missed time during the preseason, though, gave an opportunity to the other rookie wide receiver in Taiwan Taylor, a little bit to Jonnu Smith, although that's a different position as well, just to show what they could do. What kind of an impact can those two guys have on this offense as rookies themselves? Well,
Jonnu Smith is going to have probably a little more impact than a Taiwan Taylor, because you don't have the blocking tight end that we had last year. I'm escaping Anthony Fasano, thank you, who went back to Miami. And so you draft him in the 4th round and bring him in here. Mike Mularkey said it tonight on his coach's show, and he said it yesterday after practice. His blocking is just fine, and a lot of these tight ends coming out of college are kind of glorified wide receivers and weren't asked to do a whole lot of that. He said, I'm very pleased with Jonnu's blocking, and so he'll be counted on in that respect, and I'm sure they'll work him in to catch some passes as well. But he will have a heavy involvement, I do believe, since they only kept 3 tight ends. So
he seems like a Delanie Walker clone to me. I mean, they look almost the same. The numbers are 81 and 82. So it's almost easy to get them confused. And they run similarly. They both catch the ball well. They're about the same size and stature. He's almost like a clone of Delanie Walker, which isn't a bad comparison.
And if that's the route he's going, and he has the career that Delanie Walker's had, that was a good pick for John Robinson. And Taiwan Taylor, what a great young man, nice guy. Grew up in Louisville, played at Western Kentucky and Bowling Green. Very excited to see him play in his first regular season game. I think the thing that stands out to me about him, and we were talking about this, Jim Wyatt and I were talking about this before the Bears game. You had him and the new 13 and the old 13. Kendall Wright was out there, oddly enough, ironically. But the new 13, he has enormous hands for a guy his size. And yeah, he's had a drop or two here and there in the preseason, but I don't think you're going to see him drop a whole lot, because he's got huge hands, and they love his savvy. They love his quickness. They like the way he cuts and runs these routes. And I think he's got a chance to make some plays, especially knowing that he's in, as you mentioned, a small group of receivers after Tajay Sharp was placed on injured reserve. Harry Douglas is on injured reserve. And you thought, well, they're just loaded, rich, and flush with wide receivers, and all of a sudden they're not. So
yeah, I think the fact that they only really kept 4 wide receivers, and yes, again, Eric Williams can play in. We just don't expect him to a lot. I think has to tell you they feel pretty confident that 1, Corey Davis is healthy, and 2, that Taiwan Taylor is going to be able to step in and give them several reps and several catches throughout the course of the game.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, you look at, and we go back to Kendall Wright again. You know, he had a good first couple of years in the league, and certainly I could see over the course of a season, Taiwan Taylor having catches in the dozens of 40, 50, 60 catches. I could see that if they get into some passing rhythm in some certain situations. But they've got some options there, and he's certainly one of them.
Yeah, depth in pass catchers, depth in weapons on offense, really nice for the Titans. No longer is a day of just a running back and Delanie Walker. There are some options for Marcus Mariota to distribute the ball to. Keep him healthy and let him do his work. We got to take a break. We'll come back, continue this Titans discussion. Again, our phone lines are open. 737-7767 is the number. Rhett Bryan is our guest. More Titans talk on the way after this commercial break here on News Channel 5+.